living a life that feels good, not just looks good. When the outside looks fine, but the inside feels hollow. There's a strange kind of loneliness that comes from having a life that looks good, but doesn't feel good. You wake up in a room that's clean, organized, maybe even beautiful. You go through your morning routine with quiet efficiency. Coffee made, shirt pressed, smile in place. You show up to the office or log into the meeting. You answer with calm, controlled responses. You get compliments like, "You always have it together," or "I wish I was as put together as you." And yet, inside, you're tired. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually tired. Because the version of your life that the world sees is not the one you actually live. You do all the right things. You keep up with your responsibilities. You reply to the texts. You go to the dinners. You post the photos. But late at night, when the world goes quiet, there's a hum of emptiness that won't leave you alone. It's not depression exactly. It's not sadness either. It's more like absence. The absence of something real, something yours. And maybe you've gotten so used to that absence, you've learned to live around it. Like a piece of furniture in the middle of the room, you stop bumping into it. You stop questioning why it's there. You just walk around it. But something inside you, something small and quiet, still wonders, is this it? Is this what all the striving was for? You've built the kind of life people admire. But when was the last time you felt alive in it? Not just busy, not just productive, but connected, present, whole. You start to remember little things, not big, not dramatic, just fragments of what used to feel good. The way you used to draw without needing it to be perfect. The long walks you took, not to burn calories, but to feel the wind. The conversations where you laughed until your stomach hurt. Not because the setting was fancy, but because you felt safe enough to let go. You realized that somewhere along the way, you stopped choosing joy and started choosing performance. Not because you're fake, not because you don't care, but because it felt safer. It felt safer to look like you had it all together than to admit that something wasn't right. And people praised you for it. They loved the curated version of your life, the quiet competence, the photos that said, "I'm fine," even when your chest was full of questions. But here's the thing, a life that looks good will never fill the ache for a life that feels good. And that ache, that's not failure. That's your soul asking for something more real. It doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It just means you're waking up. And awakening doesn't require burning everything down. It begins with a small honesty, like whispering to yourself, "I want more," even if you don't yet know what more looks like admitting that being admired is not the same as being known, like noticing that the version of yourself you've been selling to the world isn't the one you want to live with anymore. You start to crave spaces where you don't have to be impressive. You want quiet over claps, sincerity over spectacle, moments over milestones. And that craving, that's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's your body and spirit asking you to stop living at the surface, to go deeper, to let your life be shaped not just by what makes sense on paper, but by what feels true in your chest. You won't find it all at once, and some days, the old ways will still feel easier. But now, you're aware. You've seen the gap between what people think your life is and how it actually feels from the inside. And once you've seen that gap, you can't unsee it, but you can begin to bridge it, one small moment at a time. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to justify your softness. You don't need to keep performing the role of fine. You are allowed to want a life that feels like home, not just a showroom. And tonight, if you're lying there wondering where to begin here. Begin by saying softly, I want something real. Even if it's messy, even if no one claps for it, I want to feel like I belong in my own life again. That's the beginning, not of more achievement, but of actual alignment, not of better appearances, but of deeper truth. You're not too late. You're right on time. The cost of performance, the risk of realness. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from always being okay. The kind where you walk into rooms with a smile already stitched to your face, even though your heart hasn't caught up. The kind where you ask people how they are, because the idea of someone asking you feels like too much. You become good at being fine, so good that no one even thinks to ask if you're not. And somewhere in that cycle, you begin to wonder if anyone even sees you anymore. Not the version of you who gets things done, not the version who's easy to talk to, always agreeable, always polished, but the you who sometimes needs. The you who's messy, moody, uncertain, the real one. You start to notice how often your choices are driven by how they'll be perceived, not by how they'll feel. You say yes to the dinner you don't want to attend because saying no feels selfish. You wear the outfit that looks put together, even if it pinches and doesn't feel like you. You post the photo that gets approval, even if it's a highlight reel of a day that was quietly heavy. You build a life like a display window, carefully arranged, softly lit, curated for admiration. And maybe people stop to admire it. Maybe they comment on how beautiful it looks, how lucky you must be, how wonderful everything seems. But what they can't see, what they'll never know unless you let them, is the cost. The cost of always keeping it together. The cost of always knowing how to make others comfortable. The cost of never letting your truth take up space. That kind of life doesn't break loudly. It doesn't fall apart in dramatic fashion. It simply drains you, quietly, relentlessly, until one day you're sitting in a room that looks lovely and you feel completely disconnected from it, as if you're living someone else's life, a version of yourself you created to survive, but no longer recognize. And this is the moment where something sacred happens. The moment you begin to ask, what if I stopped choosing what looks good and started choosing what feels good, even if it's not impressive, even if no one understands it, even if it makes me harder to categorize? What if I chose rest over productivity, depth over polish, connection over performance? It's a radical thought, especially in a world that rewards surface over soul. But you don't have to change everything overnight. You just have to start being honest with yourself in small, soft ways, like admitting that you feel lonely even when you're surrounded, like acknowledging that you want more than what you've allowed yourself to imagine, like realizing that your life is full, but not fulfilling. You're allowed to ask for more, not materially, but emotionally, spiritually, soulfully. You're allowed to take off the mask, not for everyone, not all the time, but for yourself, at least. To sit with your own truth without dressing it up. To say, this isn't working anymore, and let that be enough to begin again. And yes, choosing what feels good comes with risk. It might disappoint people. It might require boundaries. It might mean unlearning everything you were taught about success, image, and being enough. But it also brings something back, something you've been missing. Yourself, the you who doesn't need to be perfect. The you who values inner peace more than outer applause. The you who knows how to breathe, not just perform. And here's the secret. The more you choose real, the more you start to feel alive again. Not because life is easier, but because it's yours. So tonight, if you feel the ache of a life that no longer fits, if your smile feels too heavy and your days feel hollow beneath their shine, let yourself be honest. Let yourself say, I want more than a life that looks good. I want one that feels like home. You are not wrong for wanting that. You are wise. You are waking up. The quiet shift from impressing to belonging. It often starts in a moment you can't plan for. You're standing in line at the grocery store. You're walking home on a cloudy evening. You're folding laundry with the window open and the scent of rain drifting in. And suddenly, you feel it. A tiny shift, a flicker of clarity. You realize you're tired of keeping up. Not physically tired, though that too, but soul tired. Tired of performing, of pleasing, of curating every version of yourself just to feel safe. Because all that effort hasn't brought you home. It's earned you nods, maybe admiration, but not connection. Not the kind that reaches down deep into the part of you that just wants to be known. And that's what you've been missing. Belonging. Not in the sense of fitting in, because you've mastered that. You know how to blend in, be likable, say the right thing. But that kind of belonging comes at a price. You've had to leave parts of yourself at the door. The sensitive part, the unsure part, the dreaming part that still longs for mornings without urgency and nights without pretending. So here's the gentle truth. You don't have to keep abandoning yourself just to be accepted. You don't have to keep shrinking so others feel comfortable. You don't have to keep trading your quiet longings for polished smiles. You are allowed to want more, and not more in the way the world sells it. More money, more titles, more things, but more realness, more rest, more quiet laughter that doesn't need to be posted to be meaningful, more friendships where you don't have to explain why you're quiet tonight, more spaces where your tired eyes are met with kindness, not questions, more mornings where the first voice you hear is your own, and she's gentle. That's what a life that feels good is made of. Not perfection, but presence. You begin to notice it when you choose not to rush, when you pause before saying yes and ask, is this what I really want? When you walk away from the things that once made you feel important, because now you'd rather feel whole. You choose simpler meals that taste like childhood. You read books that make you exhale deeply. You listen to your favorite songs while lying on the floor with no agenda. And in those moments, small and seemingly unremarkable, you feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Belonging. Not out there, but in here, in yourself. You don't have to earn that feeling. You only have to stop resisting it. Let it in. Let it guide you. Let it tell you the truth that no one else could give you. You are allowed to live a life that doesn't need validation to be real. You are allowed to slow down before you're forced to. You are allowed to feel joy without justifying it. The people who are meant for you will find you when you're being yourself, not when you're being impressive. And more importantly, you will find you in the early morning light, in the cup of tea you finally drink hot, in the way your shoulders soften when no one's looking. So tonight, as the world dims and the hum of striving fades, ask yourself gently, where have I been trying to impress when all I wanted was to belong? Let that question stay with you. Let it shape the way you move tomorrow. You're not here to impress a world that's already forgotten what real feels like. You are here to remember, to return, to rest in the quiet joy of a life that is yours, the gentle becoming of who you really are. You won't remember the exact day it happened, not because it wasn't important, but because it wasn't loud. It was gentle. It was quiet, like a breeze slipping through the curtain on a warm evening, or the slow settling of snow outside your window. While you sit curled under a blanket, you just noticed one day that you didn't feel like proving anything anymore. You stopped rehearsing who you should be and started becoming who you already are. It didn't come from some epiphany or dramatic change. It came from dozens of small choices, subtle shifts that said, I don't need to be everything to everyone. I am allowed to need rest, even when the world keeps moving. I don't have to explain why I want what I want. You started listening, not to the voices outside you, but to the one inside you, the one that had been quiet for so long. She forgot what it felt like to be heard, and she didn't ask for much. Not fame, not praise, just presence, just to be considered, to be part of the choices, to be part of the day, to be part of your life. And once you let her back in, something beautiful began to unfold. You stopped rushing to fix what was never broken. You stopped performing for people who only loved the version of you that gave more than she had. You found your own pace again, slow, soft, honest. You said no to things you used to force yourself through. You stopped apologizing for your quiet joy. You let yourself laugh too loudly, cry too quickly, and feel too deeply. You stopped being ashamed of your sensitivity. You started seeing it as a gift, and you began to recognize that living a life that feels good isn't about what others think when they see you. It's about how you feel when you're finally alone with yourself at the end of the day. Do you feel peace? Do you feel whole? Do you feel seen, not by the world, but by the person in the mirror? And if not, you know what to do now. Not hustle harder, not build a better mask, but return. Return to what makes you feel alive. Return to the books, the music, the silence, the people, the places that bring you back to yourself. Because you're not lost. You were never lost. You were just hidden, buried beneath expectations, performance, image. But the real you, the warm, breathing, beautiful you, was always here. And she is enough. Even in sweatpants, even on the days when the dishes aren't done and your thoughts are heavy, even when you feel unsure or unseen, especially then. You don't need to keep chasing a version of success that leaves you feeling empty. You don't need to keep building a life that looks perfect in pictures, but leaves you numb inside. You are allowed to live a life that's soft, that's slow, that's deeply, imperfectly yours. A life with moments that don't need to be shared to be sacred. A life where peace is more important than productivity. A life that feels like a warm cup of tea, not a to-do list. So tonight, breathe. Let the striving go. Let the proving go. Let the performance fall gently away, like a coat you no longer need. You're home now, not in a place, not in someone else's approval, but in yourself. And it's quiet here, and it's honest, and it's enough. Have a nice day and full of happiness.